Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Stoners podcast, the second episode. I'm on as usual with my co-host Sek,
Hello, I'm here.
and our guest today, Captain Astronaut.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And today we're going to be talking about what we want to see in the future for Fire Emblem. We've each put together 3 pitches to discuss for what we want to see in the next game in this series. And to be clear, it's what we want to happen, not what we think might reasonably happen. I think of my pitches, maybe only one is in the realm of possibility. But I'll kick us off. We'll go in order. So I'll go, then Captain, then Sek. So we'll start with my first one. My first pitch for the next Fire Emblem game is that I would like to see more modularity and ways to play on top of difficulty. And what I mean by that is, you know how like now you play a Fire Emblem game, you pick your difficulty, then you pick like casual or classic?
Yeah.
I want like a bunch of different options. Because I feel like Fire Emblem fans have come up with all these different ways to play Fire Emblem, like randomizers, reverse recruitment, 0% growths, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would love if some of these options were in the game, where maybe you lock them to after a first playthrough on a New Game Plus or something. But I think that would be really fun, especially because I know you can like mod these games, but I feel like that's a big barrier to entry. And Engage in particular, I think, would have benefited from this a lot because you have the rings and you could have like let people pick what order you get the rings in or randomize them or be like, I'm going to replace Marth with a DLC ring or something. And I just think this would spice up playthroughs a lot. I already play Fire Emblem games like a dozen times each, but I'd love to play them another dozen times and in different ways. So that's my first pitch. What do you guys think about that one?
I like it. You know, I always see people try to like talk about their own playthroughs online, and there's like as more and more mechanics get introduced to the game, the descriptions of playthroughs need to get like longer and longer. So it'll be like Fire Emblem Engage, no DLC emblems, or no DLC, no Somniel, or no DLC weapons. So having that manual adjustment in the game itself, as opposed to only being the player self-imposed, would be great. On top of, you know, obviously most people don't know how to mod their own games, especially more recent games, right? Like I don't know how to mod 3 houses on the Switch. I have no idea how to do that. So I think that would be good to have those features in the game and also add to the replayability.
Yeah, I know like a lot of other games. Like I think like Kingdom Hearts 3 did like a similar thing, and I mean like with how much people have edited like Fire Emblem games, it's kind of like on like the Pokemon tier at this point of like how much people have like messed with these games, especially the GBA ones. I don't see why not, to be honest. Like especially like switching stuff with the rings, like that could be fun. There's like a lot of like minor stuff that like you wouldn't even think they could do with that kind of feature. So it's kind of like a net positive. There's no reason not to. So
Yeah, the reason I had this idea was actually Gales of Naeli, which is a indie SRPG that I think is coming out. I don't think there's an official release date, but upcoming pretty soon. They released a demo, and in that you like hit new game, you pick your difficulty, and then there's like 6 modes of play. You can like play it normally, you can play it with 0% growths. They have a mode where like the enemies get stronger every few turns.
Yeah.
And you can like mix and match them, so you can pick as many as you want. And I'm like, I'm going to play this game like 10 times because there's so many different ways you could play it. And I would love if Fire Emblem did that. I think it would be fun.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I don't I don't really have anything else to say. Like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess it's a pretty
Yeah.
non-controversial one, right?
Like, I know
Right.
it's like there's nothing like that would get impacted negatively if they
Okay,
did that.
don't
Like, it's
worry,
kind of like a net positive.
Don't worry, my second pitch will be more disagreeable.
Oh.
Oh, excellent.
But we'll get to that later. So, Captain, what is your first pitch for us today?
Well, also I realized I forgot to introduce myself. Hello, I'm Captain Astronaut. I make all sorts of YouTube videos on all sorts of different games. Fire Emblem is my favorite game series, but I rarely make videos on it because I'm really lazy. Anyways, my first pitch, and I actually started writing this for a video, and I was like, wait a minute, this would be perfect for this podcast. I don't promise that the video will actually ever be made, so don't look for it. Basically, for the past 10 years, if there's one thing that Fire Emblem fans have heard, is that there are too many Smash Brothers characters, or too many Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers. So, and that, like, I think there's like 8 at this point. I think, and like in
I
Ultimate.
think so.
So
Yeah,
it
around
got
there.
it got to the point where it's just like, why don't they just have their own fighting game? And that got me thinking, yeah, why don't Fire Emblem just have its own fighting game, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Soul Calibur.
Yep.
Yeah, which, for those unfamiliar, it's just a series where it's a fighting game, but the characters fight with weapons. And I'm like, that would be perfect. Like, that sort of combat would be perfect for Fire Emblem. So that's kind of my proposal. Basically, a Fire Emblem 2D fighting game where it's 2v2 battles, to reference, sort of like pair up in Awakening and Fates, or like the Three Houses Agiton, or even the Engage Rings to an extent. Where characters from throughout the Fire Emblem history fight each other with weapons.
I mean, I'm in.
I mean, it's not like the first time we've like a big RPG series has like done that. I think especially the like 2v2 thing is good because like you could do like a lot of like cameo characters like that, and that's kind of like the big thing you'd want with this is just put like as many Fire Emblem characters as you can.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I'm imagining like 2 games that I really like, and I'm not even into the franchises that much, were Grand Blue Fantasy Versus and Dragon Ball Fighters.
Yeah.
I think that kind of game would be perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I think what's interesting about a Fire Emblem fighting game is who makes the cut.
See, that's the first problem I actually ran into with this. Because I'd say the only characters who have to be here would be like Marth. And that's it. It doesn't matter who else is playable. And, the first thought would be, oh, just include every main character from each game. But, thinking of like the 12 emblem rings from Engage, those characters who were chosen, over half of them were using swords. And while there are like some, they were able to get really creative with the abilities and have them all feel differently, at the end of the day, they're all kind of using swords. And abilities on an equipable item can be more varied than how a character moves with a sword in a fighting game. So I think it should go maybe the route of Pokken Tournament, where they did have the roster for those games. They did have the most popular Pokemon, right? Charizard, Pikachu, etc. But they also had some ones that are like no one would expect to be there, like Braxian. Who wanted Braxian in the game, right? But they were able to make them all the characters play differently. So instead of maybe not necessarily have just like, oh, it's just the main characters again, maybe have some random ones to like more so to represent all the different weapons in Fire Emblem that they've had. They've had swords, lances, axes, bows, daggers, and shurikens, and then all the different types of magic. Brawling Knuckles. They have the transforming characters like Laguz and Manakets. In Heroes, even staffs can do damage. So instead of just having the main characters, have it kind of be spread out. Which brings me to my next problem in a fighting game, or like at least a 2D fighting game, is what do you do about mounted units?
Oh yeah, I was gonna wonder. That was like, I was gonna say because there's like a few lords I think you'd have to add, but for me
Absolutely.
when it comes to like a roster, like when I think about like the Warriors roster, what I would have wanted to do is like pick a character like per each major class throughout the series. Then you get like all the different weapon types. But I have no clue what to do with mounted units.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I had the exact same thought. Just have all the different classes represented. You have like sword masters, heroes, generals, but then like a large percentage of Fire Emblem characters are mounted, and like it wouldn't really feel like imagine Pala without her mount. Like that wouldn't be really her, right? So I did write down a couple options. The first option would just be to dismount, have the character dismount at the start of a battle, and then mount up for like a special move, But I'm like, I don't really like that one. The second option is just to say, screw it, they're just gonna be big. Because I was looking at
Ridley, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I've written down. That's what they did with Ridley. They just like, yeah, just put him in. Who cares? He's going to be bigger.
Just deal with it.
Hitboxes are really important in fighting game balance, but you know what? They're just going to be bigger. I was looking at the engage animations to get ready for this. I'm like, a person on a horse isn't actually that much bigger than like a person on foot. I mean, obviously they are, taller and longer, but if it's a 2D fighter and the characters just facing each other, it's not hugely different. So that is an option. Just say screw it and just go for it. A third option would be to make it a 3D fighter. However, 3D fighting games are generally not very good. So I don't think anyone would want this option.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but that's a hot take coming in. I think you guys have the right idea, though, that you can't just like put all the lords in.
Right.
Because when I've talked about a Fire Emblem fighting game before, and I remember just like writing down all the lords, and I'm assuming we're counting like units that maybe technically aren't lords, but like are like your Robins, your three houses,
Like
Yeah.
you'd have
house
to put the three
leaders.
houses house leaders. Like that's like such an easy way to put in a bunch of different weapons, and they're
But
so
like
popular.
for reference, like Dragon Ball Fighters had a launch roster of 24 characters.
Mhm.
There's 17 Fire Emblem games. A lot of them have more than one lord.
Right.
It
Well,
would
I'm
have to be a
wondering
pretty big
about
roster to include all of them and other characters. So I feel like you have to just like. It hurts me to say this as a big Fire Emblem 5 fan, but like maybe we save Leaf for DLC and
Yeah.
put a different character in.
Like when I think of like what lords you'd like have to put in, it's like Marth and like Ike and like at least one three houses one. But honestly, I feel like you'd probably put in all three house leaders at this point. Um, but like just the essentials, or like someone who can like bring something really specific to the table. Like you could put Micaiah in because you get a magic user out of that, and like what other light
right.
magic user are you gonna put in?
And then one idea I had was as what Smash Brother, what Ultimate had was the concept of Echo Fighters, which is basically the same dude but looks different. So that could be a way to like to introduce more Fire Emblem characters either through updates where it's the character plays the same. Like for example, Marth and Lucina, those two characters can play the same in a fighting game, right? So you
Yeah.
swap out
Yeah.
their appearance, their voice lines, but they essentially play the same. So if we go more of like a route that you represent different weapons and different classes over just having characters appear, then that could be a way to like branch it out more.
Yeah, and fighting games have always had like your
Like your
Kens and
Ken and
Ryus.
Ryus,
Yeah,
right.
who like they're not exactly the same, but like there's more similarities there than most characters.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that'd be a great way to like keep up interest. Like like every like couple months we get like a big update with like a few like new Echo characters or skins, and I think like the 2v2 like adding like assist characters is also a really good way to include a lot of smaller characters like
Right.
on the
Yeah.
side,
And
because there's so many.
you could do like tag team characters too.
Yeah.
Like Erica and Ephraim could potentially be one slot on the roster.
Hmm.
Right.
All right. It sounds like we're all in agreement on this one, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be down. I'm down for more Fire Emblem spin-offs in general,
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
I
honest.
agree. I would be psyched for a Fire Emblem fighting game, to be honest. All right. So general agreement on the first two pitches. Can we go 3 for 3 sec?
Okay, mine's like a gameplay thing. I want them to bring back all three like magic types, but like actually make them more distinct from each other in like a meaningful way. Mainly my ideas was like keeping like light magic like lower damage, but actually giving it a notable crit rate, and like making dark magic like making dark mages more focused on like physical defense than magical defense, and like keeping dark magic like slower. Maybe it's harder to double with it, but like it gives you more defense, or like it heals in ways that maybe aren't just Nosferatu. I have to think about that more. This is like, and then with Anima, I was thinking more specifically. I played like a Sacred Trilogy like semi recently, which is like a Fire Emblem 8 rebalance, and the way they did Anima was like you have the three magic types, but it's like Wind magic has like extra range but is weaker. Fire magic is like neutral, and then thunder magic has like higher crit rate and like higher damage, but it's only one range. And I think doing something like that would help make anima feel more distinct than it does right now. Because right now it's kind of just like we have three magic types. I mean, engage helped a bit with stuff like L Thunder's extra range,
Yeah.
and that could work. But I want more stuff like that because I feel like magic's kind of just there right now, and I feel like we could do more with it. So that's my
Oh
pitch.
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It would be great if the different weapon types could have, rather than just the conventional weapon triangle, if they had additional sort of soft properties to them that were inherent to that type. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's also like the magic triangle exists in GBA, but it doesn't really do anything even there because it's
Right.
like you're not gonna have like mages affect mages unless they did like a really hard like one of the mages doesn't have high res. But I feel like I thought about that with like dark mages maybe having low res but like higher physical defense, maybe doing like an armored mage thing there or something. But it's like then that just kind of makes them worse in regards to the magic triangle. I feel like it's kind of unnecessary. So I'd
Yeah.
rather do like more soft like properties with other just the weapon types themselves.
What do you think about what I mean? This doesn't have anything to do with anima, but what do you think they did? How they did it in like Three Houses and Echoes, where you have like the dark mages that have their spells are more focused on doing damage, and then you had the light mages who had more like utility and healing, and then like a little bit of damage, right?
I don't. I can. I'm not. I don't mind that. I actually wouldn't mind going back to unique spell lists in general. I actually really like that in Three Houses. Um, I kind of. I think we could. I think I more just would like that to get expanded on. I think is mainly my thing. It's like there in Three Houses, but it's like on like a few characters, and I feel like it's kind of like not. It's like still kind. It's like not like distinct enough because like a lot of like light magic is just still just staves at that point, which like
Right.
I feel like unless we're gonna get rid of staves again and do just spellless magic, which is fine. If we want to do that with light magic, that would be okay. It's just kind of like if we're gonna make them distinct again, like I'd like to have like Micaiah's style like light magic back. Then I'd want to do something more specific. Um, but that could they could do like other things, like maybe like instead of like the crit rate, maybe light magic does like statuses or some other healing effects or something. I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but I'm not opposed.
Yeah. I realized I forgot to say this pitch is a yes from me too.
Okay.
I used to love like whenever I go back and play FE7, even though like the spells don't feel terribly different, I've always liked like the aesthetic difference between like your shamans, mages, and monks. So like
Mhm.
if they also felt more mechanically distinct, I feel like that could only be a plus.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think there's a lot of like I mean GBA animations in general are really good, but there's also just a lot of like nice distinction between the different characters, and also I just like the different like lore roles each of them had like in those games, like especially dark magic. And since like modern games have much more variety in like the classes with mages like doing physical weapons or other combinations of magic, we could do more interesting class designs than just you promote and you get staves, or in GBA or in Sacred Stones you get light magic for some reason and no one uses it.
Oh, sacred stones, my
Sacred Stones
beloved.
tried. It tried its best.
Okay, sounds like we're in general agreement on this too.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh, so great. Everybody had a good first pitch. So now I'm gonna give one that I don't know if you guys are gonna like. Um, I want more tasks that only your lord can do. And to explain what I mean, I've been playing a lot of the Arcanea Marth games lately, and something I have come to appreciate that I used to not like is that Marth is the only one who can go to villages and recruit certain characters. And he can also open chests, but thieves can do that too. And I actually like the effect that this has on the game because I think it pulls you in multiple directions and often stops you from just taking like the path of least resistance to the seize point, especially in a game that has like unlimited range warp, right? Like, why don't I just immediately warp Marth to the throne in the Samson and Aaron chapter? Well, it's because Marth has to go recruit two characters. Um, and the other smaller benefit I like from the Lord being the one to visit villages is that so generally, like anybody can visit a village, right? And then the villages kind of have to have generic dialogue, and your character can't respond because the game, like the writers, don't know who you're going to visit the village with.
Right.
But if
Yeah.
your lord is the one that has to visit the village, then you can put whole conversations in there because it's always going to be Marth or whoever your lord is. And I think Dragon Veins are another good example of this. Although I think there it like applies to too many units, which like pushes you towards deploying the royals who are already really good, as opposed to giving your force deployed unit something to do, even if they're not the best at combat.
Yeah, I can see that. I think especially it would a lot of like more recent Fire Emblem games, I guess notably besides Engage, have like a lot more or like more likely to have more than one like Lord character at a time. And I think that would actually give them more to do between each other, which would work. One of the smaller pitches I had, I wasn't gonna bring it up. Other was just like I just like to see more things to do on maps besides just kill the bosses, and I think that like gives you another um like idea to like another thing to do, and giving it to a specific unit makes it more dynamic than just well I can send my flyer to get this village on turn one, so I'll just do that. Engage worked on this with stuff like the defeating multiple bosses. I don't know. It's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think if there are multiple lords, then it wouldn't be that bad. Because I'm remembering playing I think it must have been Shadow Dragon, I think, and just seeing a village in one direction and then the throne in a different direction and being like, okay, Marth's just gonna go on a solo quest to the village first, while everyone else kind of fights, actually does combat, and just having to like wait, like clearing out all the enemies, and then having Marth just catch up to everyone else. So I think if there are multiple lords, wouldn't be that bad. And I do like the whole. I remember in that game, Marth would have specific conversations with the people of the villages, so that did lend to more story.
Yeah, I will say it does require, I think, for this to work, one that the maps have to kind of be designed well. Like you don't want to
Right.
just like put a
Yeah, that helps.
yeah, you don't just want like a village on the opposite side of the throne and like no obstacles on the way to the village. Otherwise, like what are we doing?
Right.
And then I also think this works better in games without rescue because like I feel like the fun of this for me is like in Shadow Dragon, you have like this mediocre lord, right? Like Marth's not a great combat unit.
Hmm.
Um, so often you got to send him with some buddies, right? And it's like
Right.
and we're doing like two things. I send some people over to go deal with the throne or some side objective, and then Marth and his friends are going and getting the village, and that's fun for me. But I feel like part of the fun is protecting and making use of Marth, whereas when I play like some GBA Fire Emblems like Ellawood mode, FE6, or like Ephraim mode where there's a lot of seas maps, I feel like my lord spends a lot of time in a horse's saddlebag. And I don't like that. I
Yeah.
want to use my lord. So I think this sort of thing works better when like the lord is actually going to have to go walk to the objective.
Yeah, I think I think that's definitely a pro in games that have a lot of siege maps. I guess like my initial concern is just that Fire Emblem's kind of moved away from that design. I mean, except but like it's definitely an issue with like FE6 and stuff like that because it's like Roy has to do things, but it's just the same thing every map, and he can do it just by getting walked over. He doesn't have to engage with it in any meaningful way. And I definitely think more maps could use like side objectives that you have to like break your army up to do. Engage was a bit better with that, but I think other games could have used it more.
Yeah. I mean, Engage was like the return of villages and on-map recruitments, and
That's
but
true.
like I want more of them.
Yeah,
I was like,
and
this is
I'd
I'm
like them
glad
to be
we
more
have these
dynamic.
again, but I want more.
Like this is not related to this pitch. I really want Fire Emblem to move away from the our cast is 8 royals and every other character is their retainers because it is
Right.
so boring. It's really boring from like a character like backstory perspective. Um, Three
Oh, I
Houses didn't
strongly
have a
agree.
ton
Yeah.
of Three Houses didn't have a ton of like recruitments in the traditional sense, but one of my favorite things about that game's cast is just that every character in that game has a very strong sense of place within that world, and you can see how like living there has directly shaped the person they are. And Engage, I like Engage's characters, like I like a lot of them, but there's a bunch of them where I feel like you could switch what country they're even from, and it like would not change that much about them.
Yeah. Well, or I would say that about like Fates too. Sometimes they do this better
Yeah,
than others. Like I feel like Elise's retainers are actually really good. Like I think if you were to switch Effie to some other lord or some other royal, it would be like a completely different dynamic.
yeah.
But like you could put like Perry with whoever and it would be exactly the same character, I
It
feel
would
like.
still
Right.
be
Right.
bad. It would be still be really bad. Okay, actually, unironically, I think Perry would make more sense on Camilla than Xander. Um, I guess that's a take I can say now.
I'd have to think
Yeah, I can
about
see
that,
that.
but on initial impression, I agree.
But yeah, I think like I guess like just more on like on map recruitments and like the village stuff could be it could work. Yeah, I'm not.
All right.
It's very context dependent. Yes, but yeah, I'm not opposed.
All right. So final votes on this one, yay or nay?
Um, I'm gonna give it a very tentative yay.
All right, yay-ish. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I am. I'm a very skeptical. Yay!
All right, I'm
If
gonna
done
take like
right, it will
half. I'll
work
take
out
like
great.
half a thumbs up from each of you.
Yeah, it's like a Lord death condition is like usually the only game over condition. So it would be interesting to have the Lord do more than just seize the throne and be a game over.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm glad we found like a little contention on this one.
Yeah,
We can't agree the whole time.
Right.
that's true. That's true.
All right, what's your second pitch for us, Captain?
All right. Well, I think there's going to be a lot of contention with this one, especially because I myself have contention with it.
Fair enough.
Um, okay, Fire Emblem, but without um, on map experience points. You only get bonus experience at the end of chapters based on like performance and map based objectives, and you can only and you get a lot more stat boosters through completing on map objectives. But in terms of just fighting one-on-one fighting, there's you get zero experience from that.
So this is interesting. I've been playing a Fire Emblem fan game lately. It's a roguelike called Embrace of the Fog.
Oh, God,
And
Lord.
it actually does this. Um,
Oh,
you don't
really?
get any experience for combat. You just at the end of the map, your units get experience,
Yeah.
and
See,
it kind
I
of
would do it
works.
like Tellius, where it's just a big pool,
Oh,
and then
and you can
between
distribute
chapters, you
it.
just like assign it out to who you want to to basically to level up. And the thought process behind is like I do a lot of working out and training, and I'm just like just thinking about it. I mean, obviously video games are not real life and you should not try to be real life, but it's like, okay, we have three people fighting this dude, and the one person who gets the last hit in gets like the most experience. How does that really translate to real life, as opposed to if it's between battles? It's like, okay, we're gonna have this one little wimpy kid. He's gonna be bench pressing like crazy between battles. We're gonna invest everything into him. So then the next chapter, he comes back, he's super jacked and ready to fight. That's kind of the thought process behind it. And then the stat boosters, I guess you could think of as like protein shakes and steroids.
Oh, Lord.
We can roid up our units between
I mean,
Exactly.
it's not a far cry from what people talk about Spirit Dust as at this point.
It's pretty much tonics, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it is just tonics. Um, as someone who like when I play Fire Emblem, my number one thing I enjoy is just seeing my units go from like where they are at the start to like at the end. So like, I really like having my in battle EXP. That's just like part of the dopamine I get from playing the game. So um, I'm like I don't want to say I'm like against it just on principle. It's just like I don't think I would enjoy it. I wouldn't
Right.
mind like a bonus EXP system coming back, maybe in a different way than Tellius, just because I like Tellius bonus EXP. But I know a lot of people who just the way they use it is just we get a bunch, then we just put it on Marcia and or someone else, and the game
Right.
doesn't stop you from that, and it probably
I do
should.
think though that you could make a Path of Radiance bonus EXP system that like doesn't reward that.
That's true. I do think you could do that. I just think if we wanted to do something like this, we should quantify that we should do that because
Yeah, have like
it's rough
limits
into
to
that
it. You
game.
can't just like level up somebody up to from 1 to 20 between one chapter, right? There's got to be
Okay.
limits to it
Yeah.
so the player is more incentivized to like spread it out more.
I guess my only like question with this, do we lose then the aspect of like, okay, we have like our Wimby, we have like our Amelia, right?
Yeah.
Do we lose something from units like Amelia if like instead of having to put 4 dudes around an archer and have Amelia hit the archer 40 times to level up twice? Uh is some appeal from that sort of unit lost if it's just like we beat the map without Amelia doing anything, and then we just like pump the EXP in?
I definitely
Honestly, I
think it
think
would help
so.
if I definitely think it would help if you had to like it has to be units that were on the map that can get the bonus EXP. But yeah, you would definitely lose some of the appeal of those units.
Right. And I think you would kind of lose those individual stories where it's just like, oh yeah, I had um I strategically planned it out to have to whittle down the boss so I could have Nino come in and do 1 damage and finish off like this like terrifying boss, right? You do kind of lose some of that. And to go along with what you said, Sequitur, I also love watching my units level up. I think there is a lot of like dopamine from, you level up, you get the essentially the gotcha of the level ups, the ding 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 ding. Everyone loves that. Everyone loves
Yeah.
number go up during combat, and you do kind of lose some of that as well.
Although thinking about it, I feel like Fire Emblem has kind of moved away from the Amelia type of unit anyway. Like
Yeah.
Engage
That is
has like
true.
Anna and Jean, right? But like you don't really train them the way that you do Amelia. You stick Micaiah on them and you press the EXP button.
Right.
But people still love them. So I don't know, maybe it would be fine.
I will say I'm not sure the Micaiah button was meant to be used that way. I don't know. Like
Oh well, my
specifically,
my point here was just to say but that's what people do with them and people like them, right?
that's true.
Right.
That's a fair point.
So maybe
Yeah.
maybe that sort of design like can still work even without like having to do the on map grinding that we had to do in like FE8 trainees.
Yeah, I think about like like games without between map grinding options. Um, this was also part of a video I never ended up making, but basically, I think of FE10 in part 2 when you're playing as, I think it was Jeffrey's Charge, that chapter, where you like the whole point of that part of the story is that it's a civil war. Like you're Crimeans fighting other Crimeans. So Elincia even tells you before battle, hey, try to keep casualties to a minimum. So gameplay, like story wise, you don't want to fight your own people. But then gameplay wise, I'm like, well, I need to level up my units so that they can fight God at the end of the game. So instead of just charging straight for the throne, I'm gonna fight every single dude on this map because I know that it's a video game and I need to level up my guys. However, if it was only like a more objective based bonus experience, then I wouldn't be. Maybe I get more bonus experience from just completing the chapter quickly and keeping casualties to a minimum versus had I just gotten experience through combat.
I
If
will
that makes
say
Yeah.
sense.
I'm pretty sure they actually do give you bonus EXP in that map for not killing
Right.
people. But yeah, I see your point. I actually, even if they kept normal EXP, I'd actually really like to see like some kind of like bonus objectives coming back. I think that could be fun.
Oh,
I actually really
absolutely.
like some of those in Tellies. Not all of them. Some of them are crazy, like the stealth map or
Oh
the
yeah,
complete
nobody does
pacifist.
that. I've
I've
never
done the
done
stealth
that.
map and the pacifist map route, and it's terrifying. It's so
Yeah,
bad.
it sounds not fun.
But it still works in Tellius, I feel, because like if there's a really crappy map objective, you just don't do it.
Right.
That's true. Yeah,
It's no big
that's
deal.
true.
All right. I'm giving this I'm giving you a yes-ish on this one. I could see it. I think if they made a game this way, I would probably still enjoy it. But I do want to go on a quick side tangent on Jeffrey's charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid and for a long time growing up, I always thought his name was pronounced like Joffrey.
Oh.
I think I
And
also
I feel
used
like
to do that.
Jeffrey sounds like so much less hard. Like Jeffrey's charge.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jeffrey, that's the butler from Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Exactly.
Joffrey,
exactly.
that's a
Jeffrey
knight.
sounds like the guy I met at Subway. Like,
Okay, but
I
yeah, it's
see
a
your
yes
point.
from me.
It's like a tentative, it's like I'm not entirely opposed, but I'm gonna say nay. It's just that I don't think I would enjoy it that much. I will
Right.
say, to go back to the first pitch about like different like modes, that could be like a really good, like in a game that has bonus experience already in some capacity, like a mode option. I think that actually be really fun.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Take notes, intelligent systems. All right.
Okay.
What do you got for us for your second pitch, Zach?
Okay, this is another gameplay thing. I want them to bring back beast units. This includes Manikeets, but to a lesser extent because we still have Manikeets. Although I would like them to do something along the lines of like how Tiki worked in FE like 11, like the Arcade games, where like she had different like types of dragons and they had different properties. Like some were a lot faster, but like had like bow weaknesses, or some were more magic based and had like high res, that sort of thing. I forget all the different dragon type names because they're not that important, but that's like my brief pitch on Manikeets. Different dragon types, like dragon stone types, would be nice. But I was really trying to think how to bring back Lagoos in a way that isn't just how they are in like Awakening and Fates, where it's just here's another unit and they just transform and it looks cool, but it doesn't really do anything besides give extra stats. And I was actually thinking of maybe trying to compare it more to like engages and engage. Like maybe like they can attack in smaller ways, like when they're not transformed, but you have the option to transform, and they get like different abilities based on like what type. Like maybe um cats get like an engage ability, it wouldn't be called that, where like they can dodge everything for a turn, or and tigers get something different and dragons get something different, and so on and so forth, and kind of make them more into like more distinct from regular units. I'd have to find a way to make this so there's a good enough like balance in terms of like not making them too good. But I feel like a
Right.
big issue with the way they work in Teleus is that like there's some control over how they transform, especially Radiant Dawn, but it's kind of all over the place, and they just don't do anything when they're not transformed, which I think is an issue with enjoyment. It's also like I'd want their EXP to be like similar to other regular units, because that's another issue I have with Teleus Lagoos. But yeah,
As
that's it.
someone currently training Lyre in Radiant Dawn
Oh
hard
god, I
mode, I
forgot about that.
agree. They should get regular EXP again.
It's so like, why do you have growth units in Radiant Dawn if they're not gonna have regular EXP? What is the
No,
purpose of that?
Lyre is like the perfect example of how to do a Lagoos wrong. It's like you have to wait 4 turns for the privilege of crappy combat, and then she doesn't
Is
even gain
right?
any experience.
It's like, oh my god. Um,
Uh,
but yeah.
but not to sidetrack, I agree. I think the animal units are cool. I didn't think they were the best implemented in Awakening and Fates, where it's just like they just kind of show up and they're
They're
like, "Oh,
functional, they're like a neat bonus, but they don't really do anything distinct. They're just
Right.
kind of like, here's a cool one range unit.
well." And I also think they're very loosely implemented into the story,
That's
whereas
true.
the Lagoos feel like a much bigger part of the world to
Right.
me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd like that more than Awakening and Fates' style, but I'd also be okay with it. I just would like them to be more interesting class-wise, because I feel like there's like some potential to do something more interesting with like, because I think making them noticeably distinct from other classes would be fun. Like I feel like most other Fire Emblem classes function very similarly. So
Yeah, I
I've
think it's a
also been
great
trying to
idea.
think of ways to incorporate some of the engage like class mechanics in ways that aren't just the rings. So that's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I
Okay.
mean, obviously, I'm always just more for more classes, better,
Yeah,
more options to play better.
a lot of my pitches were just here's more class ideas.
No, but I think it's like it's not just more classes, right? I feel like it's
Mhm.
like we want more classes that like do a unique thing.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Because
that's the big thing.
like Three Houses and Engage have a lot of classes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But there's some where I'm just like, I don't care about this class. It's not real to me. Like
Yeah,
Berserker is not a real class to me in Engage.
but what about Smash Plus?
All right, Smash Plus is pretty funny. Especially that one mod that makes Smash Plus knock enemies back 99 tiles.
Oh yeah, that's really
Makes it
fun.
highly amusing.
uh, but yeah, it'd be nice to get like there's a lot of classes that are kind of just like, oh yeah, that's in the game. It's kind of like they're out of like tradition. For some of them, I think like Berserker, it's like, oh, it's there because we need like a solo axe class.
Yeah.
But like Warrior is just better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that some of it is like like would I don't know, would Engage have a Berserker if there wasn't like a history of there being Berserkers in Fire Emblem?
I don't know
I
if
don't
we
know.
called that. I think there'd be like some because the thing is like Engaged Berserker is like functionally outside of just being an axe using class. It's like pretty much nothing like any other Berserker in the series. It's
I guess
just
it's
kind of like
supposed to
big
be the
strength.
Smash specialist.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but you don't really use Smash for the Smash thing, like the movement thing. You kind of just use it for the big
No,
damage.
I just use it for
Right.
the big silver great axe
This, yeah, that's
knight.
what I mean. Like you just use it for the funny big damage. Like it does. So like getting the extra movement is like, oh, thanks, I guess.
All
But
right.
yeah,
So I mean, yes for me on more interesting classes and animals.
okay. I'm
Oh yeah,
happy we can agree
definitely
on
yes for
this.
me. Yeah, more classes, more options to play, more way to like. 'Cause I love the engage rings abilities, but I'm like, how would they implement some of those into future Fire
Yeah,
Emblem games without bringing back rings? And then it's like, do you really want? Like, I love the engage rings in engage, but I don't know if I wanted them to every single game to be like an engage ring game, right?
yeah. I don't want them to be contextualized the same way.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways you could do it, right? You could do like maybe like a subclass system
That was one of the
or
other things I had on my list at
um
some point.
like
Yeah,
or just like more class skills, like maybe Berserker. I mean, Fates did that, right? Fates has a couple class skills, but maybe you could
yeah.
even do like 3 or 4. I don't know. Lots of ways to get these skills in the game, I think.
I one of the things I had on my list that is like kind of related. I would like to see games like I don't want to say I don't want Fates' skill system back, but rather I would prefer that enemies don't have a bazillion skill combinations. I thought the way Engage handled enemy skills was a lot more manageable in a way
I
that isn't
agree.
Conquest.
Yeah,
Uh, but you could have more class skills without necessarily meaning every enemy has like Astra. Because I have played a hack recently that where it's like, oh, every enemy has the same skill set that your characters do based on class, and that is horrible for enemy design
that
because
sounds terrifying.
you get like demented stuff like every archer has speed proc adept, which is insane. And also certain blow, insane combination to put on enemies. No, there was no testing on that. Oh my god.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our third round of pitches, our third and final round. This is my most involved one,
Okay.
so bear with me for a moment here. I would like Fire Emblem to explore new settings. I am open to whatever, but I would like to pitch Fantasy Wild West. A great example of this is the Wild Arms RPGs. I don't know if you guys have ever played those, but it's an old JRPG. It's got swords, firearms, magic, monsters in like a fantasy Western setting, and it works. They even did a little known tactics RPG on the PSP that was pretty cool. So picture, if you will, I'm going to be using like names of real life places, but obviously in a video game, you would give these video game fantasy names.
Of course.
The Cowboy Kingdom of San Antonio. Pride of Fantasy Texas and Guardians of the Scroll which seals the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. after they were defeated thousands of years ago.
Oh my
Our
god.
protagonist, Princess Olive, is the younger of the royal siblings of San Antonio, and with no expectation of taking the throne, has taken up the hobby of sharpshooting, becoming one of the finest marksmen of Texas, but neglecting her courtly duties while her older brother, Prince Jesse, learns to be a noble in preparation to ascend to the throne. Until one day, Jesse learns from a nefarious advisor that he's not actually blood related to the royal family and is actually a descendant of Conquest, the horseman of the apocalypse, and was merely adopted by the royal family as an infant. The advisor that informs him of this also tells him that the news of his heritage will spread soon, ruining his hopes of gaining the crown. So he assassinates his parents, frames Princess Olive for the murders, and sends his new military to find the relics he needs to unseal the scroll of the apocalypse and release the horsemen once again. So we follow Olive fleeing Texas, aiming to build an army, prevent the return of the horsemen, and bring back justice to the kingdom of San Antonio, all while learning to be a leader and care for her people, which is a completely new lifestyle for her. So we can have all the classic Fire Emblem mechanics here, but mapped to a more fantasy Western aesthetic. So we can have cowboys instead of cavaliers, musketeers instead of mercenaries. We can keep wyverns and Pegasus knights, or we could get weird with it and do like sword-wielding knights riding on flying frogs. I don't care. I just want something a little different.
I'd like to say
I
that
love
the
it.
pitch went in a very different direction than I was expecting based on the first half. It really got me in the first half with that one. But yeah, no, I one of the big thing I had for one of mine was actually just also that I would like to see different aesthetics. So I'm like in full agreement with this. This would be fun.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the only thing I would make sure to do would to absolutely use real life place names. I want
You
to
want the
defend
kingdom
the
of San
kingdom of
Antonio?
Texas. Absolutely, it should take place
So,
in
Oh
Texas.
my god.
when I wrote this, I was just like naming like the inspirations for the different states. So like I was including musketeers. So in my script I have written flees from Texas to France.
To France. Damn, that's like far.
No, Fantasy France is right next to Fantasy Texas.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
like that's really far to
Yeah.
flee to. Damn.
No, they have a vassal state in Louisiana. So it's right there.
Oh man, the US map is gonna get really messed up now.
So for flying units, you could just have like a big vulture carrying someone
Big vulture.
with their
Yeah, why
talons.
not,
You know,
right?
Honestly, yeah. Fuck it. Like,
I say go for it. Absolutely.
yeah, like I don't like have fun with it. Like if you're gonna do a whole different like I feel like one of the things I was gonna say is I like that Fates did like obviously Hoshido is a much more like Japanese aesthetic, but I feel like they could have gone even farther with it. With
Yeah,
like
well,
new
Fates
classes.
was a game I was thinking about here because that's one of the things I like about Fates is it has a bit of like a different aesthetic.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And I would like even more of that. And I mean, obviously, the Wild West is the example I used, but I know some people like don't want to go modern. They're like, I don't want firearms in my Fire Emblem, and that's fine. There's all sorts of different settings we could do, right?
Right.
Yeah. I guess like spoilers for my next pitch I wanted to do. I was gonna suggest Steampunk. That's like the one I'd like to see. But I honestly would be okay with like just a game that moves to like another like just a different culture. Honestly, like just other than just like Western European style, like a full
Yeah.
game that does like Japanese stuff or anything like any other like there's so many different inspirations they could take from. Um it'd be interesting. It's like I think something nice with Pokemon and Pokemon does this, I guess, like to limited degrees, but every region is so based on like a different part of the world. And that's like a
Right.
nice thing, a nice change of pace, which granted those games desperately need, but still, it's nice. I appreciate they do it.
Oh,
Actually,
absolutely.
I think Pokemon's a good shout because I've talked about this on Twitter a few times, and like I always get some people that are like, "Oh, but like it won't feel like Fire Emblem." But I don't know. I mean, Pokemon's a great example where they changed the setting, but it always feels like Pokemon to me.
Yeah, I think like I feel like there's a lot like it's definitely a change. Like we'd have to like you would have to get used to it. But I feel like Fire Emblem is like at a point where they could reasonably make it look like Fire Emblem still. I mean, like look at like Heroes even. Heroes is like
Like if
so far
Ganunga Gap,
removed.
if Ganunga Gap Fire Emblem Heroes could be a
Yeah,
Fire Emblem
and like
character,
Right.
which, by the way, I don't mind. I think she looks great. But if she could be a Fire Emblem character, we could have Fire Emblem characters that look a little different.
yeah, like I think the series just has to do it first to like convince people if it's like
Right.
is how I feel about it. Like, because like it's like the Fates characters like on the Sheeta side like look like Fire Emblem characters and like completely different inspiration for their aesthetics. But
Right.
you can show me those characters and be like, yeah, that looks like a Fire Emblem character.
Yeah, even
So
with Pokemon, how they went back to the Legends Arceus game, and it was
mhm.
so different. The aesthetic was so different. It took place in a different time period than the rest of the games. They changed a lot of the mechanics, but it still ultimately felt like you're playing a Pokemon game. So I think
Yeah,
Fire Emblem could absolutely explore those other settings.
yeah, that's definitely like a. I don't think they will, but it's
Oh
like on
no, I don't
there.
think they
No,
will
no.
either.
It's like one of the things I want them to do. It's like high on my list that I would like to see
Yeah,
them
when I
do.
said only one of my pitches was in the realm of possibility, it was the Lords getting more stuff to do one.
Yeah.
So it sounds like general agreement on this one. What do you have for your last pitch, Captain?
It was actually kind of similar to yours, but it was more of like a joke pitch. Um, we've all played Fire Emblem, so get ready for Water Emblem, where it's Fire Emblem but under the sea.
Oh,
All right, but what if I told you that would be dope?
Right?
honestly, I'd be down. Like I don't
Like
see
so,
why
yeah.
not.
Instead of it's you're playing as mer people. I don't know if you guys are familiar with D&D species, but Tritons,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sahagins, etc. More bipedal
Yeah.
undersea creatures. Instead of riding cavalier riding horses, they'd ride sea horses, of course. Instead of Pegasi, you're surfing on manta rays.
Okay, that'd be sick
There would
actually.
be boat maps, but they'd be in reverse, where you're in the water and you're attacking people on a boat.
Ooh, like there'd
Um,
be like interplay like with like the surface. Okay. I was
oh,
wondering if it'd be just
absolutely.
like underwater or like there would be like a conflict. Okay, interesting.
See, that's what I think. I think the first half would be like an underwater conflict,
Hmm.
battle for the throne amongst the undersea peoples, and then what unites them is all the threats from the surface with the trash and pollution and everything. So they all unite to
Finally,
attack the surface.
Fire Emblem makes its stance on climate change.
And
You know,
then,
I know you meant it as a joke pitch, but I feel like I have to give it a yes because
Oh
if they
no, I'd be
released this
down,
game, it would be a
100%.
day one
oh,
buy. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I would buy this. This sounds be sick. This is where they finally do what I've been waiting for many years, which is the like crab, lobster, like alligator, lagoose, where we just
Oh
get
my
like
god, that
sea
would be
creatures.
amazing.
Oh my god, it's finally time.
Like I'm thinking of a game I played a few years ago, Wargroove, where they had a lot of
Hmm,
like amphibious battles where you transition from sea battles and then deploy your units on the land and then transition to land battles. So you could have some sort of like some things like that in Water Emblem. And I have written down here the final boss is a big pile of salt.
does that like represent the Fire Emblem fan base?
Yes.
Self present company included.
You gotta have a mechanic where your units can only breathe on land for like a certain number of turns before they have to like, hop back in water and refill their oxygen because they can only have gills. So stuff like that. It could lead to some interesting and hilarious gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board. I don't even have any notes. I'm just on board.
yeah, I don't. I honestly, this just sounds like fun. Yeah, I don't like do it. Like,
I think what I'm getting from this is that all three of us would be interested in a little bit of a change of pace.
Right.
from the series aesthetically.
Yeah, I love the fantasy, but after what 17, 18 games now, we can branch out from away from the medieval fantasy a little bit.
Yeah, there's just there's so many other aesthetics they could roll
Yeah, and
with.
I know we just went with two
Um,
that are
and when
like pretty like kind of out there, but like even if they just wanted to do something a little more grounded, there's like there's more places than Western Europe, right?
Right.
that's what I mean. That's why like my initial thing is just like at minimum, like we could reasonably do like anywhere else in the world than Western like Europe style. Like we could do like any like there's like Asian stuff they could do what they could do. I mean, if they could do like Africa, they could
Yeah,
do
Africa,
like
Egypt,
Latin America, they could do
many
Egypt.
That'd be
That'd
options.
be
awesome.
cool. There's so many options. Like the world is huge, and we only get Western Europe half the time, which I like. I
Oh, of
very much
course.
enjoy Western Europe,
Oh
but we
yeah,
have
I mean,
17 games of it.
I when they release the next one and it's like Europe again, I will be buying it. I just
Right.
Yeah, of
We'll all
course.
be there,
And I'll
but
probably be saying like how much X character looks sick as hell, but like you know, like we can do
yeah, I
more.
agree.
like I vaguely remember like when Awakening was in development, one idea they like tossed out was like, let's have it take place on Mars.
I still
Is
that's
that like a real
insane.
thing?
Like at
Like
what
I've heard people say that, but I've never like read the interview.
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure. So it could have just been made up, or could have just been like in the blue ocean phase where they're just throwing out ideas on the wall to see what sticks. That could have been just one thrown out.
Ooh, I haven't heard the term blue ocean in a while. Hitting us with the business phrases. But okay, it sounds like we're all in agreement on this one. Zach, why don't you hit us
Yeah,
with our
apparently the
final
Mars
pitch?
pitch is real. I kind of I've been kind of just like saying it throughout the last section. But like my number one like pitch would just be like a steampunk aesthetic, which is probably I guess like the furthest in the future for these. The civic inspiration I was thinking of would be like maybe closer to the way Final Fantasy does like its technology, where it's like the politics and the aesthetics, a lot of it's like still is set
Yeah,
in the past, but like some of its technology is like more like
right.
aesthetically modern. It doesn't have to do that because it'd be like more steampunk,
No,
but
no, I know what you mean. It's
um
like you still have like the it's like Magitech, right? Like you still have the
yes. Yeah, that's kind of where I'd be. They could do like a lot of new like different classes. Obviously guns would be like something interesting. Like um I also simply put in my notes that I don't want them to do what Heroes did with
Oh,
the
the horse
horse
armor.
like mounts, like the robot horse armor. I need them to stay away from
ooh,
that,
I'm adding that
please.
unit to the my Ganunga Gap argument of if this could be a Fire Emblem character, we can do a slightly different aesthetic.
Right.
Oh, I agree with that. Specifically, I just can't take the
The horse
horse
armor
armor.
is funny. Yeah.
It's hilarious, but it should not be like we could just have horses. You could do other animals. There's like we have a whole animal kingdom. We don't need to make the horses
All
robots.
right.
But it's so funny when they shoot missiles.
Put them on like cars. Listen, give the horses missile launchers. I'll take that.
Are they robot horses, or do you just want to like attach a missile launcher to the horse?
Oh, the
Okay.
latter. I think the horses are ready for it.
Does the horse fire it, or does the rider?
The horse.
Wow,
I
that's a
think they'll
lot of
be
faith
both.
you put in the horse.
The horses.
They must be
Yeah.
like the
No, listen.
Engage
In this
Mage
game,
Knight horses with the little hats. You could tell those ones are smart
this
because
is
they
what I'm
have
Oh
the
yeah.
hat.
saying. Like this is like a military like trained horse. Like that horse
The horse
it's
has
on site.
been through
The
boot
horse
camp.
is its
Yeah,
own unit.
it was trained.
Yeah, it's on site.
I think it's very funny that we all had like a very similar last pitch. I
Right.
mean, in
Right.
like three different directions, but
Yeah, it's just, but it really is just like I just like to see something new aesthetically. I also just think it'd lead to just like new like story elements. Like in yours, you mentioned like the oh we're trying to get like the four horsemen of apocalypse revived. It's like that's like a new, even if it's like functionally not like super different from like a typical Fire Emblem MacGuffin. It's like a new direction for it. You know, like you can make them like cool
Yeah.
boss
Well, it's like
fights
kind of a
that you
spin
could
on
do.
Sacred Stones, right? It's like, oh, there's like some things
Yeah.
you have to get to unseal this scroll, and then a big monster comes out. Except instead, it's like 4 monsters.
But
um. So sure, yeah. I mean, Steampunk Fire Emblem is also a yes for me.
Oh, that's for me too. Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. Well, we mostly found agreement outside of the second round. We had some disagreement in the second round. But
Some
this was
hot
fun. I liked
takes.
hearing you guys' thoughts on what you want to see
Yeah.
in the next Fire Emblem game.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, this was a great time.
so I guess we'll close out here then. Thank you for coming on, Captain Astronaut, and Sequitur, of course, as always. Is there anything either of you
Yeah.
want to plug before we close out here?
I don't have anything at the moment. Maybe one day.
I'm always in the process of making YouTube videos. What when they come out, well, we'll see. But check back in the future. There will probably be something.
I understand that's the schedule I've been moving towards lately.
Yep.
But they are bangers. I highly recommend
thank you,
Captain
thank you.
Astronaut's channel. So thank you both for coming on. And I hope everyone watching has a lovely week. If you're watching on YouTube, I don't think you can leave comments on Spotify. But if you're watching on YouTube, tell us what you want to see in the next Fire Emblem game. I'd love to read your pitch. As always, a big thank you to my geckos on Patreon, and a shout out to my skinks, Aaron Gedden, Cosplay Sylveon, Doopy, Emma, Ike Pumi Cabre, Lonely Voxel, Lucy Sev, Morgwolf, Red Mage Morgan, Stars to Art, The Noodle Doodler, Upscale Furry Trash, Van West, and Wingman.